There is something most men have never been told directly. Something that sits underneath years of well-meaning advice from parents, teachers, and older relatives who all said the same thing: just be a good guy. Treat her well, be kind, and she will choose you. And most men believed it. They lived by it. They were kind. They were available. They were patient and agreeable and generous. And then they watched someone who did none of those things walk away with the woman they wanted. And they had no explanation for why. This video is that explanation, not to make you bitter, not to make you manipulative, but to give you an honest understanding of what is actually happening inside the psychology of attraction. Because nobody gave you that understanding, and you deserved it a long time ago. Let us start by making something very clear, because this topic is constantly misunderstood. Being nice is not the problem. Kindness, generosity, warmth, respect, these are not weaknesses. They are not repulsive. They do not kill attraction on their own. What kills attraction is a very specific pattern of behavior that gets incorrectly labeled as niceness. Dr. Robert Glover, psychologist and author of the landmark book No More Mr. Nice Guy, spent years studying men who chronically struggled in relationships and dating despite being objectively good people. His conclusion was direct: the issue was never kindness itself. The issue was a deep pattern of approval-seeking, conflict avoidance, and the complete suppression of authentic self-expression in exchange for being liked. That pattern, not kindness, is what destroys attraction. And once you see the difference, you cannot unsee dots. So what does this pattern actually look like in real life? It looks like a man who agrees with everything she says even when he privately disagrees. It looks like a man who changes his plans the moment she shows even a hint of preference. It looks like a man who apologizes constantly, not because he did something wrong, but because he is terrified of making her uncomfortable. It looks like a man who never initiates anything bold because he is waiting for a guaranteed green light before he moves. It looks like a man who gives compliments not because he genuinely feels them, but because he hopes they will generate a positive reaction. Every one of these behaviors has the same source: fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being too much, fear of not being enough. And fear, as we will explore, is one of the most powerful attraction killers that exists. Here is where it gets psychologically interesting. Attraction is not a logical experience. It is an emotional and biological one. Women are not sitting down and consciously calculating whether a man is too nice. Their nervous system is doing the calculation for them, and it is doing it in milliseconds. Research on emotional contagion, published in studies referenced by the American Psychological Association, shows that human beings pick up the emotional state of others through micro-expressions, vocal tone, body language, and energy, long before any conscious thought occurs. When a man is operating from a place of fear and approval seeking, that fear transmits. She does not know why she feels slightly less attracted. She just feels it. Her body responds to his emotional frequency before her mind has formed a single opinion about him. This is why logical arguments about how nice you are never work on attraction. Attraction is not listening. David Buss, evolutionary psychologist and author of The Evolution of Desire, whose research surveyed mating preferences across 37 cultures, found a consistent pattern: women are biologically drawn to signals of confidence, social dominance, and emotional self-sufficiency in male partners. These traits signal genetic fitness and long-term survivability. The overly nice man, without realizing it, broadcasts the opposite signals. He signals that his emotional state is externally dependent, meaning he needs her approval to feel okay. He signals that he has no firm ground of his own to stand on. He signals that he will reshape himself around her preferences rather than bringing a defined identity to the table. And while none of this is conscious on either side, the biological result is predictable. She feels less pulled toward him. Over time, even when she genuinely likes him as a person, there is a concept in attraction, psychology called emotional polarity, and it is one of the most important ideas you will ever encounter in this space. Emotional polarity is the charge that exists between two people when they bring distinctly different energies to an interaction. Think of it like magnetism. Opposite poles create a pole. Identical poles repel. When a man constantly matches, mirrors, and molds himself to a woman's preferences when he agrees with her views, adopts her energy, follows her emotional lead. He collapses the polarity. They become the same pole, and same poles do not attract. This is why the man who pushes back gently, who maintains his own perspective, who does not immediately validate every opinion she holds, that man creates tension. And tension, managed with warmth and confidence, is the foundation of romantic chemistry. Remove the tension and you remove the charge. Let us talk about a specific, everyday example that most men have lived through without understanding what was actually happening. She cancels plans at the last minute. Maybe it is the second or third time. And you say, completely fine, no worries at all, we can reschedule whenever you want. Inside, you are bothered. You had made arrangements. You were looking forward to it, but you suppress the discomfort because you are afraid that expressing it will push her away. Here's what actually happened in that moment. You communicated to her, your comfort matters more than my standards. And standards, according to Dr. Robert Glover's research, are one of the primary signals through which a man communicates self-worth. When you have no standard for how your time is treated, you are not being kind. You are signaling that you do not value yourself. And if you do not value yourself, she cannot value you either. Mark Manson, in his book Models, which remains one of the most psychologically honest books written on male attraction, makes a point that most men resist the first time they hear it. He writes that non-neediness is the single most attractive quality a man can possess. Not looks, not money, not humor. Non-neediness. The man who does not need her validation to feel good about himself. The man who does not need her approval to make a decision. The man who does not need her to stay in order to remain emotionally stable. This man is profoundly attractive because he is rare. Most men, particularly men who have been conditioned to be overly accommodating, are deeply needy, not for physical things, but for emotional validation. They need to be liked. They need to be chosen. And that need radiates outward and poisons every interaction with a quiet desperation she can feel but cannot explain. Here is a distinction that will clarify everything. There are two types of kindness. Kindness from strength and kindness from fear. They look almost identical on the surface. Both men open doors, both men give compliments. Both men show up on time and are considerate. But the internal source of those behaviors is completely different. The man who is kind from strength does these things because that is who he is, because his character is generous and his values include treating people well. He does not do it hoping for a specific outcome. He does not change his behavior based on her reaction. He is consistent whether she is warm or cold toward him. The man who is kind from fear does these things as a transaction, hoping to purchase her approval, her interest, her choice. One is confidence. One is strategy. And she feels the difference every single time. Breen Brown, research professor at the University of Houston and one of the most cited researchers on human vulnerability and authenticity, found in her landmark studies that the most meaningful human connections are built on authentic self-expression, not on the performance of an idealized self. When a man suppresses his real opinions, real preferences, and real reactions in order to maintain a pleasing image, he is not building a connection. He is building a facade. And facades, no matter how pleasant, cannot generate deep attraction. Because deep attraction requires that she feel like she is responding to something real. When everything you show her is carefully filtered to maximize her approval, she's not attracted to you. She's attracted to a character you are performing. And some part of her senses that the real person behind the performance has never shown up. That absence creates distance, not closeness. Let us talk about what the alternative actually looks like in practice, because this is where most men get confused. They hear "stop being too nice," and they swing to the other extreme. They become cold. They become rude. They start withholding kindness as a manipulation tactic. This is not the answer, and it will fail just as completely as over-niceness does. The alternative to too nice is not mean. It is authentic. It is a man who says what he actually thinks calmly and without apology. It is a man who expresses genuine disagreement without needing to win the argument. It is a man who says that actually didn't work for me when something doesn't work for him, without drama and without explanation. It is a man who keeps his plans and his standards intact even when she tests whether he will bend them. This is not aggression. This is self-respect expressed behaviorally. And self-respect is magnetic. One of the most psychologically significant consequences of chronic people-pleasing is what Dr. Robert Glover calls the covert contract. A covert contract is an unspoken deal that the overly nice man makes with himself, and unconsciously with the woman in his life. It goes like this: I will be endlessly kind, available, and accommodating, and in return, she will choose me, appreciate me, and never leave. The problem is she never agreed to this contract. She does not even know it exists. So when her behavior does not match his expectations, when she does not appreciate his sacrifices, or when she pulls away despite his efforts, he feels betrayed. She feels confused by his sudden resentment. This dynamic is one of the most common sources of relationship breakdown, and it always traces back to the same root: a man who is performing niceness in exchange for an outcome, rather than simply being himself. There is a powerful concept in social psychology called outcome independence, and it is directly connected to everything we have discussed. Outcome independence means that your emotional state, your behavior, and your sense of self are not determined by what she does or does not do. You text her because you want to, not because you are calculating whether it will generate a response. You make plans because you want to see her, not because you are hoping the gesture will move you forward in her approval. You are kind because that is who you are, not because you believe it will be rewarded. Robert Cialdini's research on influence and persuasion confirms that people are drawn to those who appear to have options and who are not desperate for a specific outcome. Outcome independence is not indifference. It is the demonstration that your life is full and meaningful regardless of what any one person decides about you. Let us address the deeper psychological wound underneath chronic niceness, because for most men, this behavior did not come from nowhere. Dr. Robert Glover's clinical work found that men who struggle most with overaccommodation and approval-seeking almost always develop these patterns in childhood as adaptive responses to environments where expressing authentic needs or boundaries was met with rejection, punishment, or withdrawal of love. A boy who learned that being agreeable kept the peace, that not making waves meant he was safe, carried that strategy into adulthood. It worked at 8 years old. It is destroying him at 28. Recognizing this is not about blame. It is about awareness. Because once you understand that your niceness is a learned survival strategy rather than an authentic expression of who you are, you can begin to consciously choose different behavior, not to manipulate others, but to finally show up honestly as yourself. The Journal of Personality and Social Psychology has published multiple studies confirming that perceived self-worth is one of the strongest predictors of how attractive a person is rated by potential partners. Not objective looks, not income. Perceived self-worth, the degree to which a person appears to value and respect themselves. When a man demonstrates that his time is valuable, that his opinions matter, that his standards are real and non-negotiable, he communicates high self-worth without saying a word about himself. Conversely, every time he bends, every time he suppresses, every time he says, "whatever you want," when he clearly wants something different, he chips away at the perception of his own value. Over time, these small signals accumulate into a picture. And the picture she is building in her mind, whether she is conscious of it or not, determines how much attraction she feels toward him. Here is something worth sitting with. The man who is too nice is often the most exhausting man to be with, and this surprises him every time he hears it. He cannot understand how someone who tries so hard to make everything comfortable could be draining to be around. But exhaustion is exactly what she feels. Because being with a man who has no edges, no resistance, no genuine opinion of his own, a man who simply reflects back whatever she brings, is like talking to a mirror. There is no one actually there. She cannot lean on him because he bends. She cannot trust his compliments because he gives them to everything. She cannot feel the satisfaction of genuinely connecting because there is no distinct person on the other side to connect with. Edge does not mean aggression. Edge means presence. It means there is a real defined human being in the room, one she can actually feel dots. So what does the practical shift look like starting today? First, notice every moment you are about to agree with something you do not actually agree with, and pause. You do not need to start a conflict. You simply need to say calmly, "I actually see it differently." That one habit, practiced consistently, will change your entire social dynamic over time. Second, when plans change or your time is disrespected, name it simply and without drama. "That didn't work for me" is a complete sentence. Third, stop over-explaining and over-justifying your decisions. High-value men make decisions and hold them. They do not seek permission or validation for their choices. Fourth, maintain your schedule, your friendships, and your personal goals regardless of where things stand romantically. Because a man with a full life is infinitely more attractive than a man whose life empties out the moment a woman enters it. The deepest truth underneath all of this is something worth stating plainly and directly. Women do not fall in love with men who need them. They fall in love with men who choose them, men who have options, have purpose, have a life worth living, and still decide that she is someone worth including in that life. The energy of need is repellent. The energy of genuine choice is deeply attractive. When you are too nice, when you are outcome dependent, when you are performing kindness in exchange for approval, you are operating from need. And she can feel that need even when she cannot name it. When you are authentic, when you hold your standards, when you bring a real defined self to every interaction, you are operating from abundance. And abundance in every area of human psychology is one of the most magnetic things a human being can radiate. Asterisk, it is worth addressing one final misunderstanding before we close. Some men hear this message and conclude that relationships are a power game, that the goal is to keep women uncertain, to never show emotion, to be strategically cold. That interpretation misses the point entirely. The goal is not to manufacture distance. The goal is to be so genuinely full, so rooted in your own purpose, values, and identity. That distance naturally exists because you have a life that fills you. There is a profound difference between a man who withholds warmth as a strategy and a man who is warm but simply does not need her warmth in return to feel complete. One is manipulation, one is wholeness. Wholeness is what we are talking about. A man who is kind because his character is kind. A man who is generous because his spirit is generous. But a man who also knows clearly and without apology exactly who he is and what he will not compromise. If this video helped you see something about yourself that you could not quite name before, something you have felt but never had a clear framework for, then do one thing right now. Leave a comment with one honest word that describes the pattern you recognize most in yourself from what we discussed today. Just one word. Because the men who are willing to be honest about where they are right now are always the men who end up somewhere different and better. Subscribe to this channel if you want content that takes your psychology seriously. No cheap tricks, no manipulation tactics, no rage bait. Just honest, research-backed understanding of how attraction, identity, and relationships actually work. And if you know a man in your life who is stuck in the too nice pattern, share this video with him. It might be the most useful 20 minutes he spends this month.